All right, so yes, we'll be starting right away, and hopefully my screen is visible. Okay, yeah. So like we were doing yesterday, we were looking at APIs and how we can make API calls using using the fetch API, using the fetch request, the fetch command in vanilla JavaScript. Of course, apply to of course apply to all the frameworks, the JavaScript frameworks, and yeah. So from right now, everything we'll be talking about is going to be a further explanation of the things that we covered yesterday. And maybe since we are all just learning React along, I will be doing React along with API calls. So today, yesterday we did a few concepts in React directly before we got into APIs. So even today we're going to do a React concept before we can get into the extension of the work that we did yesterday. Okay, so probably I could start with the error that we had yesterday so that we can take this away before we get into the other components. From yesterday, if you remember correctly, we had an issue. I had this array data info data.items data.items, and this was an this was an arrangement of data I was getting from a specific endpoint from the Covalent API, and it was getting balances. So the issue was I had an array and I had to display information from that array, but I wasn't able to do that and display it on the interface because of an issue I failed to resolve by yesterday. So let me get back to the actual endpoint that we had. I think it was this. Yes, this must have been the endpoint we had. It was fetching activity on specific addresses for different chains. So that's exactly the same API endpoint I'm going to bring back here. So I'll paste it and then modify it as I'm supposed to for it to fit the fetch standard, the standard it's supposed to be in for as I'm making a fetch request. So I'll take this out since it doesn't fully represent what I'm trying to look for. So yes, we had a number of parameters along with this fetch request. First of all, to verify what kind of request is it. And this is a GET request, so it had headers. Usually, authentication information is put in the headers, and then in the body, specific rules and I'd call them stipulations for how you want to receive the data back from the API. I usually put in the body, but we did not have a body here. Some APIs have a body. This one did not. And yes, so since this is going to be a wallet I feed in myself, I'll use that syntax and it will derive this wallet address. I think I was fetching my very own. Let me look for that address. There's a specific address I want us to use in this query. The one that ends with 93. Yes, this. I gave it a special name. I called it substrate because it's usually used for testing things in the Polkadot ecosystem, the EVM part of the Polkadot ecosystem. But we'll look at that later, probably. And yes, so that's my address. So it would be resolved into the address that takes up this position for this specific endpoint making that request. Now I want to get this data and put it on the interface, but let me first view it. Let me first view it in the console before I can come down here. So in the console, if I went to, or maybe I need to start the application. I don't think it's on. So for it, oh, it's actually on already. At what port is it running? Maybe I could restart it so that I can get the port correctly. npm run dev. Okay, it's running on port 5173 on my local server. I'll put it right here. 713. I think that's the very end point, the very application. Did it raise errors? Said failed to fetch. Let me figure out what the issue is now. Okay, this should be okay. Unless something is wrong, let me refresh it. So there goes my data. And when I click on this array, rather this object, it has a data object. And inside the data object, we have this property item. So this is the property I was accessing yesterday, but it was failing for me to display it. And the reason was, when I was fetching the data, I needed to set a stipulation that unless this data has been received, there should be a loading symbol that displays. So that's where the issue was, and that's exactly what I want to fix now. Because now I have the data, I can actually view it on the front end. So this is what I'm going to do, and this is where the issue really was. So when I'm going to use a loader or to use an if statement, a ternary operator inside the JSX, I need to put everything inside the container. So this is what the issue was. I put everything inside a container here, correct? But I was running the condition in a wrong position. So let me correct it and just do it for each of us to see it. So this is how I was supposed to do it. So inside the container, what I had to do is use this symbol. So what this means, these two curly braces, they mean that inside this container, or any element, any div element, or any HTML element, as long as it's within the return method of a component, it is now in the format of JSX. So inside JSX, it is possible for you to actually write JavaScript inside the HTML elements themselves. So inside this container, this is where I would have to put my condition. A condition for what should display when the data is available or when it's not. So I would say something like, if the data object is undefined, that means if it does not contain any data, remember it only obtains its data in the use effect statement here. And what happens is the fetch request is done, and then that data is passed onto the state variable called data by calling its assigning function set data. So what happens is when set data is called, it's only called, by the way, after the data has returned from the API endpoint. So here this would be a data stream, and then this would be the data stream being converted into a JSON object. And from then, here we then have the data. So we pass that data. I'm actually getting into the data object and then getting a specific segment of the data, not the entire data object. I'm only getting a specific element called items, which is an array. So that I'm able to display specific elements within the array itself. And so I'm passing that data onto the state variable called data, then I'm accessing data here. So what I'm saying is, if data is undefined, that means if the data hasn't returned yet, what should I display? So if you want to, inside JSX, specifically if you're writing JavaScript and within your JavaScript script block, you want to put an HTML tag that you want to display based on a certain condition, or in whatever situation, you're always supposed to put it in parentheses. So in this case, what I would be saying is that in case data isn't present, in case it doesn't have any information, what should I do? Okay. I hope I'm audible enough. So in case it doesn't have any information, so what should I do? I should display the loader. There's a loader we actually downloaded, I think. We could use any of these two. From React Spinners, there is propagate loader or bounce loader, but I'll use propagate loader. So yes, I'll use this self-enclosing syntax because it comes in as a component that just has to be passed props to. So display that if data isn't having any data. If the data variable doesn't have any data, otherwise display what? Otherwise display an unordered list. So you see I'm putting it in brackets. Otherwise display an unordered list. So inside the unordered list now, I can destructure my mapping. And when I destructure the mapping, I would be able to get the specific elements from the array, because the map function is a function on arrays, on the array.prototype. I'm sure we looked at object.prototype. There's also another universal object called array.prototype. So it has all the methods that are accessible to instances of the array. Every time you use the array literal, it gives you access to those methods. One of those methods is map. So then here, I would still use this symbol because I'm going to be entering JavaScript itself. So what happens? When data is empty, display this. Otherwise, do what? Destructure the data object using the map function. Okay. Then inside the map function, it takes in a callback function. And then inside this callback function is where I define everything that I want to define. So the properties, the parameters of the map function would be, first of all, the actual data at that specific index element. Then the second parameter is the index itself. I can choose to use the index or not to use it. So it is not required that you always have all the parameters provided. So then here, inside here, I can define the specific item that I'm going to display. So what is it going to be? It's going to be a list item. And this list item, first of all, must have a key. What is the key? The key is the index. Then what is the actual data element? So what property did I want to display really? The property I wanted to display is name. So I would say element.name. Now this should be sufficient for me to be able to see this data. And as you can see, the data actually displays now. Okay. So now I can choose to do this for even maybe create a table, but I won't get into the details of creating a table and things like that because we'll get, the focus for today is really to understand APIs and basic React concepts. Things like table, you can do that with HTML. But yeah, so you can see that the data is now actually displaying. And maybe I could choose to display something else from this array. I could choose to display the label, or perhaps the logo or the logo URL. Let me display the label. So element.label. By the way, each of these elements that I'm displaying is on the array items, because the array items is the array is the data that I picked from the endpoint, that the information that was returned, and passed it to the state variable data. So right now I'm destructuring the state variable data here using the map function into an unordered list. So I'm displaying every single element from that array, every element at every single index. I'm destructuring them as well to display the specific component that I want from them. So you can see these are the labels for the chains. And so it would show, now this endpoint specifically displays activity of this, of a wallet on these specific chains. So maybe I could, instead of, just a moment, data info. So what I'm going to do, I am going to declare another state variable where I get the entire object. So I can now pick out any information that I want from the object. So I'm going to define a state variable here and call it entire state, entire data perhaps. Now it says set entire data. So this is just a convention. You could really name this function anything else, but to make it easy for maintenance and maybe for other people to contribute to your projects, it's best to stick to the coding conventions so that it's easy for someone to interpret a line of code without them having to go through a lot of hard work to understand where it's derived or what it actually represents. That's actually really the purpose of conventions when it comes to code. It makes it easier for code to be evaluated and read or debuggable. So yeah, I'm sticking to the standard here. I'm going to paste the entire data object here as well. So here I'm destructuring it into the array items, but now I want to also get the entire object and place it here. Set entire data, so it gets the entire data info object. Then maybe I want to display the actual address that I'm getting the information for up here as heading 3. Maybe I don't want to actually display this, or maybe I could display this and just change it to an H3 and say this is the address. So if that's the address, then maybe I want to pass in the address. So I have data. This is entire data, I think. Entire data, yes. Now, the entire data is the actual object that I return, the entire object. Now, inside entire data, which would be this whole object, including this array. So this entire thing is entire data. According to the way I defined it, I picked the entire data object and passed it into the entire data state variable. So from here now, I want specifically this address. So how would I find it? I would have to look for the, is it under data? It is under data, and data is an object as well. So I would have to get into the data object, which is inside the returned object. Then inside data, I can find the address there. So this would be the address whose activity we are deriving from all these different chains. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Vianney. So from all these different chains, that will be the address that I display there. Let me try refreshing it and see. So I expect to see the address above the chain labels. Entire data is not defined. I think that's what it is. Can't read properties of undefined reading data at line 48. Okay, so now we're facing the same issue. So typically, it is supposed to display H3. Normally, like the data has to be available for it to display H3. But because the data is being derived from an endpoint, I now have to use exactly the same thing that I did with this array. I have to display, maybe wait on it in a certain way, wait on the data to come in a certain way before I can display this. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll define another container. Maybe later we'll look at Redux stores and how to use them and how they can enable you to handle this state in a way that is much more seamless. So now inside here, I'll define my logic for waiting on the data coming from the API. Maybe I would say that if entire data, for instance, if entire data has information, display what? Display this element. Okay, display the heading H3. Otherwise, display what? Display nothing. Otherwise, display nothing, maybe. Or perhaps a paragraph that shows that it's loading. I'm sure we've seen this on some sites. So that would be something like that. So it displays the address here, but when I refresh it, oh, it's really, really fast. So we're not able to see the information. So I'm going to, just to demonstrate that one thing that I did, I'm going to declare a set timeout function here. So that it extends the time we have to await the result. This is how we declare a set timeout function. Just like every asynchronous function, they take in a callback function, but specifically this also takes in a second parameter that defines the number of seconds you have to wait on the result from that request or from that asynchronous operation. So it would wait 6 seconds when I refresh it. So here it's loading. This loader, we put it there. Then this loading, we just typed it up there. They're all awaiting on results coming from the same endpoint. And you can see it displays the address here. And then the chain labels here. But particularly what I really wanted is activity on these specific chains. So maybe we could look for that. So we have the data, we have the address, we have the items, which represents the chains that this address has activity on, has had activity on. And let's see, what is it called? The property that represents activity. Excuse me. I think this address, yeah, this endpoint was about activity. So there should be something here that reads activity. Color theme. Last seen at, perhaps this would, so this would show you when this address was last seen on that specific chain. So maybe we could do that and look at that. So instead of us getting the label, we could say, when was this address last seen on that chain, last seen at. So maybe we could display a list item with this. Okay, a list item with that. Yeah, sure. So this displays the specific time at which we were last active on these chains. I think we can actually convert this to I'm forgetting the command that would convert it into a time that is readable to us. Let me try this to a curve string, but this would convert it into a string, just basically a string. Let me figure it out. Converting date to a standard time. By the way, maybe to also talk about this, I use AI a lot, not in a way that I use it to write code, but to guide me on certain things, because most of the time when we are building products, we are learning along the way. And sometimes you don't have to now, these days it's much easier. You no longer have to go through an entire documentation and have to read through every single line and make a reference that is elaborate before you can deliver or maybe execute a certain set of code. You can simply make a request here to one AI tool, and if you think the results are not sufficient, maybe you can feed your documentation into a research tool that can give you results more efficiently. But it's a good place for you to come and ask developer-related questions about things that you might probably want to clarify upon, especially if you have very short code snippets, and sometimes maybe if you're not sure how a certain component interacts with the rest of the code base, it might be able to guide you on what the concept actually means, especially for languages that have been in existence for a very, very long time. Languages like JavaScript, there's a lot of information that most of these AI LLMs have been fed on about JavaScript. They are not exactly accurate all the time, but they're a good place for you to start if you're researching a certain concept. So you get that information, maybe the results it returns for you, then verify them against other sets of different data sources. Validate them, maybe even in the forums, but they're really, really a good place and they help you move much faster. So in this case, I'm just trying to remember a command. I don't really remember how it's actually typed. So it doesn't make you less effective as a developer, it actually makes you more efficient. Using local string. Okay, let me try this. It will probably work. English format, US. If it doesn't, we could simply just let it go. It's a very small thing. You can always go research about it. It's just for you to optimize the way this data is returned and displayed. So I would have to first know what format it's in. I think it's called local. It's something like this. I just don't remember the actual command. Is it date string? Let me try this. Okay. It's not a function. Okay. So yeah, this is a very small thing. We can always figure it out on our own. So I put up a very, very long time period for us to await the results, but that's okay. Anyway, yeah, let's focus on this now. So you can see that for these different chains, I get the information regarding when I was last active on these chains. Hopefully I can actually. Let me hope I can get the label along. So I have the label and the time. Okay, so yes. Now I have the label and the time. In the middle here, I will put a pipe symbol so that I'm able to make the distinction. So on Polygon mainnet, I was last active on 9th December last year. I think the most active chains I've been working with this year is Bess. Oh, this is not my address, I believe. Is it? Oh, it is. Better chain. So I haven't done anything with Better chain, but maybe in one of the swaps and bridging that I've done, probably somewhere there's been activity that my address has done on those different chains through the bridging that I've done. Perhaps it might not have been direct, but on Base I am very sure I've had activity on Base. On Plasma chain, I'm not very sure I've done anything on Plasma chain. Yes, for HyperAVM in October I was very active. Optimism, yes. So you can always, now this is data I'm fetching from an endpoint, from an indexer. So I think we can get balances. Let me look for an endpoint that would get me balances, token balances. Then we can move forward to the concept I wanted us to cover. Then we get back to APIs. Multi-chain balances, hopefully. fetched paginated spot and historic connective and token balances for a single address on up to 10 EVM chains with one API call. This is powerful. Getting the balances on more than one chain in just one request. So this is the kind of thing that that indexers, rather bridges, would use. If you connected your wallet, they would make this request automatically. Maybe it's put into a use effect that every time you connect an address, or maybe even in the same function that requests you to connect your wallet. But just putting a hierarchy of steps, like for after this, do that, do that, and do that until you get to the result. So up to 40 chains. So the request looks something like this. This is just an example. You'd make the request with that command, then in the options, you only have the headers with the bearer token. And I think we have a bearer token, the one we've been using already. So authorization is required. We already figured that out. Wallet address is required. We already have one. Comma separated list of chain names or IDs to retrieve token balances from defaults to all foundational chains. So now query parameters, like we looked at them the other day, they are parameters that come after the question mark in a request, and we're going to see that. So specifically, maybe I want to fetch balances of tokens of this address on what chains. Let me see. What chains do I have balances on? More popular chains. So I have a balance on Ethereum. I have on Ethereum on Arbitrum, ETH on Arbitrum. So I would check for balances of ETH on Arbitrum, ETH on Optimism, ETH on Base. So I would check for Arbitrum, Optimism, and Base, comma separated. I would like to see an example maybe. But yeah, let me just use chains as a request, as a comma separated. Okay. Let me start with Arbitrum perhaps. For 6.1, okay. I think I remember the code. So I'm going to change this request. I'll take this endpoint now. So this is the thing with getting information from an API. You need to be sure what you're actually looking for, because there is a lot of information that you can get lost into it. So you need to, when you look at the API endpoints themselves, read about them. It'll give you a picture of the kind of information they return on the interface or from the site that you're making the request. So then from that point, then you can start evaluating after maybe your first request if you get actually the data that you would seek from that endpoint. Okay, so here I'm going to change this endpoint to this new one. So this is a GET request as well, but it takes in a query parameter. It's called chains. I think it's chains. Okay, yeah, so I would simply, so this is the chain ID for Arbitrum mainnet, Arbitrum 1. I just know it because I was using it, but maybe we could see the names on the chain itself, rather on the indexer itself. Should be able to see those. So for now, just a moment. Okay, I'm going to fetch information from Arbitrum mainnet. So I just want balances of tokens on this chain. So I would have to modify my data in a certain way depending on how it's being returned to me. So that's why I'm going to first first comment this out, and also every component here that was depending on data that was being fetched. These two containers, I think it's just these two containers, because if I do not do that, they would raise errors on the screen. So yes, now when I fetch my data, how does it get returned? That's what I'm awaiting now. When I see an object here, I should be able to, oh, it showed an error. Not implemented. Not supported. Oh, I think it's 42161. Sorry. (42161). That's Arbitrum mainnet. Let me wait for the results and see what it shows here. So I could have used Postman for this, but it would also take us a much longer time for us to see the information. Okay, I think I got the data. So it shows me that I have balances of 4 tokens on Arbitrum mainnet. Okay, what are these tokens? It gives you the information about these tokens, as you can see here. The contract decimals, the contract name, Arbitrum mainnet Ether, Arbitrum token itself, USDC on Arbitrum, gold on Arbitrum. I didn't know I had gold on Arbitrum. Okay, so I have 2 cents on Arbitrum, as you can see here. Is that exactly what I had in my wallet? I believe so. 2 cents on Arbitrum. Okay, we're going to see if I have balances of all these tokens as the endpoint claims, according to, so data, then items. If you're already paying attention, you're noticing that there's a standard by which this specific API works. It arranges its information in an object, then inside the object there's a data object, and then inside the object, the data object, there's items as an array, along with associated information. So I will stick to this because it's the same standard according to what I required, although inside the items array, there might be a bit of a difference. So let me see, do we have the address as well in the data object? This time we don't have the address. So if I want to display the address here like I was displaying it, I would have to change the way I access the address if I have it in the endpoint. Do I? Here at least I don't have it. And neither do I have it in the array. So maybe I would have to pass it manually. So I'm going to just pass it manually. No, but let me leave it. Let me focus on this specific container, because this is the container that contains the information in a way we want to arrange it. So element index, okay. So what will I be displaying in this case? Items, I would be displaying, it's likely going to show me an error here because I don't have label there. But I'm going to say contract name and pretty quote 24 to display the balance. So this is contract name, where is that? Contract name, yes, contract name. And then here, instead of me displaying last seen, I want the balance, of course. So I'm going to say pretty quote 24. So I expect to get both the name of the contract and the balance that I have in terms of dollars, because that's the token that token denomination, the quotation that I chose. So yes, let me comment out this set timeout function so that we fetch information normally. It's taking much longer. Let me refresh it. Okay, it displays for me the tokens here, the names. Displays for me the contract names, but does not display the pretty quote 24. Let me see. Did I type it correctly? Element.contract name, element.pretty quote 24. This is a string. This is a string too. Are they under logo URL? No. They're just in the root of the index of the array at every index. So this should work. Pretty quote 24. Pretty quote. Let me try this perhaps. So that displays. It shows me I have Ether. I don't have any tokens, any Arbitrum. I don't have any USDC. I don't have any gold. I think maybe they're just the major tokens. So let me see on another chain perhaps. No, let me use this. So this was on Arbitrum. Let me check Arbitrum. Do I have any other tokens? On Arbitrum, yes, on Arbitrum I don't have USDC, I don't have ARB, but I have ETH. Let me check. HyperEVM, I don't think I have any activity on HyperEVM. Base, let me check for Base. So this address on Base mainnet, I have 1 cent of ETH. So let me change this to Base mainnet. But specifically now I want to get the actual chain names so that I type the name correctly. Okay, it says base mainnet. Base mainnet is how you type it. That would typically be documented somewhere, although I don't want to go through finding it, so I use their AI reference tool. And where's my fetch request? So I want to change this to base mainnet. Let's see what happens. Of course, these might change. There might be different tokens. Oh wow, it shows me all these tokens on base. And I have 0 cents on all these. These are all tokens on base that were returned to me. None of them, I don't have any. Even Aerodrome dollars, I do not. Wow, Aerodrome token, I thought I did. Let me see what other chain, maybe Celo mainnet. Yeah, I think I might have some tokens on Celo mainnet. Actually, for Celo, I think I do have. Let me check Celo. So this is just an endpoint to fetch balances of tokens. I don't have Celo imported. Oh, it's here. I do have some Celo, although they might be worth very little. So let me type here Celo mainnet. Now, instead of you having to rechange this all the time, you could put it in a list so that a user just simply clicks on a button on the front end and they choose what chain they want to see, whose balances they want to see. Celo mainnet. Okay, for Celo mainnet, I do have Celo. Then I have Celo, the native asset. It's really the same thing. USDT I don't. Celo dollar I don't. CUSD. But that's okay. Celo dollar is here. USDT I have nothing. So yeah, that's my portfolio of that address on all these chains. I don't think I have any other that has any tokens. Not in this wallet or in this instance of MetaMask. All these are at 0. Was nothing at all. Or we can verify something here. We're going to check out one address and see the balance of tokens it has, then verify from the endpoint if it actually has those balances. So from here, we'll move on to another API. And if time allows, we'll get into SDKs. But if it doesn't, you can look at SDKs on Monday. Okay, let me look at this address. So it might be a contract address. So it says this address has 14 ETH. Okay, this address has 14 ETH. That's quite a lot of money. 29,000. The equivalent is what? 29,000. Okay. Let me copy this address and verify if it has those balances. So I'm going to change, but this is on ETH mainnet, so I'll have to change this to ETH mainnet. Let me verify if this address actually has 29,000 worth of ETH, as it reads on the Explorer. So on ETH mainnet, this specific address that I put here, that I'm indexing now, Now you see the API takes quite a while to return results, but the user now wouldn't know. If I didn't have a loader, they wouldn't know what is really happening in the background. It's taken quite a while. Maybe it's my network. Probably it has slowed down. But as it tries to load here, we could also check out something else. Or is there something I needed to change? I think that's it. It's probably my internet. Okay, so we're going to look at another API specifically. I'm going to explain some of the things it can do for us, and then we'll start looking at it step by step from a point of an API request using the HTTP protocol. And then in the next days, we'll see how we can use even more advanced queries that are much more customizable than an API request. Than a simple API request, yes. Okay, I don't know what that error is about. So I'm looking for Dune Analytics. Now Dune has two major services. One is called Dune, the other is called SIEM. So when you read from what it says here, make on-chain data work for you, build an on-chain data platform. Okay, so typically, Dune, the API, this one, is responsible for fetching usually general blockchain data. So for instance, if you wanted to find out the transaction activity generally on Ethereum, and some of the things that are happening on Ethereum generally as a chain, this would be the API that you use Of course, it has a number of other specific things that make it different. Then SIM is for fetching information that refers to specific wallets and addresses and contracts, and it happens in real time. That's why it's actually called real-time production grade wallet data APIs, because it's usually used for fetching wallet information, balances, activity, transaction history, all sorts of optimizations that you could do about a wallet and the activity it has had on specific chains, which right now, by the way, is up to like 60 plus chains for Dune. You use the same API, but if you want general information about the blockchain, maybe, for instance, you want to find out how many transactions were actually done on Ethereum today, and what were they mostly? Were they transactions to bridge tokens out of Ethereum or into Ethereum, or interactions with what protocols mostly on Ethereum? All that kind of information, you can do it with the Dune API, but the same API fetches information mostly for wallets, specific wallets. So that means you would have to provide the wallet address yourself or the contract address yourself for you to be able to access all that information. So we'll start with the same API because it's more relatable to us. I mean, we have wallet addresses, and if we can see the activities of these wallets, it's a more practical thing. Okay, I don't know why my API is now taking so long. Reading items at page 3729. 3729. Data info. Do we have items at this endpoint? Maybe this is the issue. I need to first print this data and see how it's arranged before I can pass it into the state variables. I think that was actually the issue. It wasn't the API. It was the arrangement of my own data. Okay. So let me wait on the result and see how it looks like. You can see it's taking a while. It's okay, I can wait on it. And now here, if you want to, of course, start using the SIM API, simply click there. And the results returned. So I'm printing the entire set of information here, and I want to get information of that wallet on ETH mainnet. Unless there's an issue, or maybe I enter the API ETH mainnet. ETH mainnet, yes. That's the correct arrangement of words as a query parameter. So query parameters come after that question mark, and this is the syntax. That's the key and the value on the other side. So it's a lot like a declaration, rather an initialization. But that's the syntax. It has taken long. Maybe I should add an error message here. So if your query fails, you can also catch the error that might be causing it to fail. And as well, this in a callback function. So I'll define the error here, then maybe print the error on the console as well, saying the error is, then I type the error here. So that will take the error message that you received here in the catch statement and print it on screen. So there might actually be an error. Failed to reload. This could be due to syntax errors or importing non-existent modules. So if my request fails and returns an error, I should be able to see the error now. Previously, I wasn't because I hadn't captured the error. I captured the error through the catch statement, but I should be able to get the error if there's an error. If there's success, of course, it will show me the results. Okay. Let me. Okay, if it has failed, that's okay. Let's move on. Was this required? None of them is required, so it should be okay. Even if I didn't have it, it would show me information on all chains, I believe. Let me first remove this then. So if the issue was the query parameter, then it would show me the results by now. Data info. So the issue is probably with my internet. It says could not establish a connection. Okay, maybe the issue isn't really anything to do with. Let me try connecting to a different network. So one of the issues that you could actually face is connection issues. So you should be able to receive that error and see it in your results as well. Okay. As it loads, let's move on to SIM API. Has it returned results? The error is type error, failed to fetch, internet disconnected. Okay. Line 28.6. Let me see if I also copied this correctly. I might have copied it wrongly. Covalent HQ, V1 will change address, wallet address, balances. That's it. It's a GET request here with a bearer token. Yeah, that should be okay. So the issue is probably with my internet really. Trying to establish a connection. And it really might actually be the internet because this is still loading. Wow. How do I go around this? Okay, let me try one last trick and see if it works. Just give me a second, please. Maybe a minute. I'm simply trying to find a better connection. Okay, this should be able to work much better. Just a moment. I should be stabilizing in a moment. Okay, hopefully it works now. My trick didn't work. Let's try it one more time. Oh, it actually fetched. Earlier on it fetched, so I wanted to see the actual arrangement of the data. It's fetching what? What are we fetching? We're fetching balances. So I wanted to fetch the balances on 100 chains. Wow. 100 balances. Maybe it should even show me the chain itself. But this is too much information. So it's dust, the amount that I have. Chain ID 8453. That's base mainnet. So I'm going to check out ETH mainnet, I think. Chains. ETH mainnet is 1. That's the chain ID. So I hope to see a result. Same issue. It's going to be a little bit of an inconvenience today. I hope it doesn't stick. Let's move on. I think the issue is just with the internet, but you can resolve it. It's not a major problem. Okay, so this would be how you log in or create an account with SIM. I could log in here. I already have an account, I believe. Okay. All right, so now I'm into my SIM API account. Now here I can create API keys. I can look at the different endpoints that exist and what information they will be returning for me. So when I click on APIs here, I ideally should see all the different APIs, which are operational, which are not. Some are in beta, some are being tested, like these ones of the Solana virtual machine. But I can query that information as well. I think they are all operational. And yeah, I could click on one of them, but I want to also look at the keys, because I believe for you to interact with the SIM API, you need to have at least a few keys. I have a number of keys. I used to build applications back then, like this one. This one was created 2 months ago, and I've made only 4 requests with it today. This clearly wasn't me, probably someone that is using the application that I built. Okay, so when I come to the APIs, you can see all the possible things you can get from this endpoint, rather this API. Token balances, transaction history, token information, token holders, activity, collectibles, DeFi position. So DeFi position is kind of a unique data set. So for instance, if you had some money staked in a protocol, or you had a liquidity position on a DEX where you're providing your money to be used in the swaps and bridging, those positions are actually tracked, DeFi positions. So when I click on DeFi positions, I should be able to see all the information. I think these are requests I made from these API endpoints earlier on. When was this? This was 14th today, 14th February. Probably someone is actively using the application. But yeah, so if I wanted to see the documentation of this particular endpoint, I could come down here to the same API. And now you can see that now there are different ways you can fetch information from this API. You can use CURL, you can use JavaScript, or you can use Python. So maybe I want to use JavaScript. So this is how you would make the request. So we're simply going to modify the information we already have. And this is how the results would come out as. What would I look at? DeFi positions. So I want to see if a specific address has a DeFi position. If you don't have any DeFi positions, it would of course tell you you don't, show you the kinds of results that you're supposed to get as a person with no position. Alright, so I'm going to copy this, but there's something different about this specific API now. In the header, instead of us having an object element called authorization, this one is called x-sim-api-key. And then here you feed in your API key. So those are the changes we're going to make. So now this is a different API. This one has actually returned the data eventually for 62 tokens. Wow, that's still quite a lot of information. Ether, I think I have a balance on how many does this have. This wallet, yes, it does have 27,000. Pretty quote 24. So let me see. Let me use data info. Data info. So I want to display. I'm simply going to display the balance here. So don't worry about that. Entire data, inside the data object, inside items. Inside items. Now inside items, I want to go to index 0 because index 0 is the one that has the token that I want to check, whose balance I want to check. It's called Ether. So this person has Ether. What balance do they have? Which should I take? Pretty quote or pretty quote every 24 hours. Let me take pretty quote. Pretty quote. This should give me the balance they have. So it's loading. And I want it to display that balance after it has returned the data. Hopefully it takes a shorter time, because I think I have a stronger internet now. Okay, the API seems to really just take its time. We're going to verify if the balances it has is exactly the balance we have here. This reads 29K. Maybe we could wait on that. 29K along with $712. Okay, 29,000. And yeah, let's go on. So we're looking at same API. Meanwhile, we could wait on this in the background. So DeFi positions. This endpoint is temporarily unavailable. Oh, it isn't available. I just had to read. It's not available. We could look for another API endpoint that that might be available. Balances, we're already doing that with the other API. So I want to try out something different, something that we haven't done so far. Derived activities including swaps, transfers, and approvals within transactions for any address. Okay, let's try out this. This one is for transaction history. Quite the time, but yet it's still not displaying entire data. I didn't pass this to entire data. Okay, so it wasn't going to show. Well, it takes quite a while, and this is a possibility. It could be due to a number of reasons. So either way, the user has to be communicated to and made to know what's actually happening. So I'm going to change this thing, Chuck Norris jokes, into something that relates with what we're actually doing. API requests. So let's wait on what? Let's wait on this to show and give me a result. Am I audible? All right, thank you. So it shows me the balance here. It's $29,780. That's the balance that this person has. It might be an entire protocol, might not be an externally owned account, might be a protocol. And exactly that is relatively it. So because of a number of things that might be changing in the market right now, the prices might be different. So this could be probably picking the price that is active right now. And then the API probably has a price of the average performance of the token in the day. But you can see it's close to the same. Actually, not really. $780 away from $712 is a very, very big disparity. So, yeah. But that's okay. But you can get the point now. You can actually receive this data. So, what do I want to display? Yeah, we have that information now. And moving forward, I wanted to look at this activity API endpoint on the same API. When I look at its documentation, I should see the information that is required of me to provide. Is there any question? Thought someone was asking a question. Okay. So activity. View chronologically ordered transactions, including native transactions, ERC20 movements. When we start doing smart contracts, we'll see what ERC20s are and understand the difference between them and native assets and what NFTs are. So see transfers of all those kinds of assets and decoded contract interactions. So you can transfer tokens or you can interact with contracts. Those are all called transactions. So you should be able to see all these things. Which kind of transactions will we be able to see? Send transactions, receive transactions, mint transactions, burn transactions, swap, approve, call. These are all forms of transactions, as we'll see them across these different asset classes. The supported chains are here with their names. Now this is very elaborate. We can even see how we're actually supposed to specify the specific names of the assets and the chains that are supported. Now, every information regarding this API is also provided here. I can go ahead and read through it. What paths, what parameters are required, what parameters are not required. So let me first minimize this so we can have be able to scroll down much faster. Request with unsupported chain IDs. Okay, let's move down. So you can see this one has a header that is required. It has a path parameter called address that is required, and the query parameters are really are optional. But there's always a default for each of these query parameters, and it says chain names are not accepted. What? If this query parameter is omitted, results include activity from chains with the default tag. So maybe we could see that on the supported chains, chains with the default tag. Those are the chains whose activity would return. Otherwise, you would have to specify information for those other chains. So that would be Arbitrum Nova, Avalanche chain, Avalanche sys chain, base mainnet, Blast BNB, Celo, Gnosis, Hyper EVM, and those are the default chains whose information, whose activity of a wallet would be returned if you didn't specify what chain IDs you want to get information or transaction activity from. So I'm going to change this. You can see they even put a default address here. Then there's a query parameter here called limit. Let's read what limit does. Query parameters, there's one called limit. Maximum number of activity items to return. Default is 20. When not provided, values above 100 are reduced to 100. So you see that? There's a default for all these query parameters unless you specify your own custom option. But let's go ahead and try it out. Maybe with this address and see if it actually has DeFi. Oh no, we're not looking. Are we looking at DeFi positions? We're looking at activity. DeFi positions was inactive. I remember now. So this specific wallet address has activity, I believe, on some of these chains. Probably has DeFi positions, rather, yeah, activity results. Let's check this out, then we can switch to our own address. I'm going to change it to that. So I'm going to look at the activity of my address on a certain chain, and then we'll verify that against the transaction history on the Block Explorer to see if it actually is the same information. So I'm going to change this back to my own address. Substrate particularly substrate. This state variable. So that when I come back to it, I get the correct information. This is it a GET request. We can verify. Let's start from the top rather. Even from this side, you can see the information. It's a GET request, and these are the headers. So what I don't have is this API key, but I can get that from my account. When I come here in the headers, so I have to change this because now I'm working with a completely different. Maybe I could just comment this out so that if I come back to Gold Rush, I would use it. XAPI key. So the key doesn't have to be in quotes, it's the value that has to be in quotes, depending on what value it is. Actually, since it's like this, it has to be in quotes. XAPI key. So here I'm going to pass the value, which is going to be my API key that I would have derived from my SYN API account. From right here, when I look at keys, I should be able to create a key or use my old key, but I don't want to display it because it's handling something else. So I'm going to call this data indexing and create that key. So it's right here. And you can see it has no requests today. So I'm going to copy it and make a request with it, then see if it actually reads that I have made requests with it. Okay, so I've pasted it here. Now that's my key, my API key. And again, I'll first wait to pass this data to the state variables and confirm how it's arranged before I can bring this data to the state variables. Okay, is there anything I've left out? I don't think so. I can now make the request. See how fast this API goes. The error syntax error expected that it is not valid JSON. Line 42. Okay, maybe along the way. Oh, I think this would be the issue. Let's try this and see. Okay, I think I get information. Yes, so what were we getting? We were getting activity on different chains. So the chain that I wanted to specifically, so you can see the activity in all different chains, all these different chains by chain IDs. So on this chain, chain 56, I'm not specifically sure what chain this is, chain 56. I transferred the Panda token, or maybe it was transferred to me. You can see with the type of transaction, it was a received transaction. So this transaction is of a token that was given to me on a chain with the ID 56. Let me verify what chain that is. With the ID 56. I had chain IDs somewhere here. I think supported changes. ID 56 is BNB. Oh yeah, I had activity on BNB, but maybe this was given to me as a reward token for maybe some activity I had done on BNB. It is an ERC20. You can see when the transaction was done. Transaction was done on 14th. No, this is the block height, I think. Block height right now. Transaction hash is here. I can even verify this on BNB scan if this is actually the transaction that was done. Let me check out. So this is the power of a blockchain indexer. It can give you lots of information that you won't otherwise have access to. So I can literally get the activity history of a specific address by specifying these different parameters. Let me see this transaction hash. Yeah, specifying these different parameters on that specific chain. That is not something that you can easily do on your own. What is wrong with this? Okay, I will use Block Scout. Maybe there's an issue with. Let me use Block Scout, but BNB. So what chain do I want? Let me specify the chain. If BNB is here, Binance Smart Chain. Oh, it isn't. Okay, it isn't on. Okay, I didn't know it doesn't actually use Block Scout. But let me find another chain that I'm sure might actually be there. Arbitrum. I think I had a lot of activity on Arbitrum. 42161. Do we have it here? I have 20 items. Activity of 20 chains. No. No, it's just the limit. Yeah, it's just the limit. So let me probably increase this to this limit to maybe 40. And let's see what the results look like. 40. Yes, I have now 40 elements in 42161. This is the chain. I had a lot of activity on Arbitrum. That's why you see I'm really coming back to it very much. So this was a receive function, a receive operation. And this is the transaction hash. Let me check the transaction hash. if I actually received ETH of what equivalent was there a value. So now this is in way. You remember the issue we talked about? So every time you're transferring value on an EVM standard chain, it's measured in way. So you have to convert it back to ETH for you to know the equivalent of ETH. So this is in way. I would have to convert it back to the highest denomination. In this case, it would be ETH on Arbitrum, of course, but it's the same thing. Do I have Arbitrum here? Arbitrum 1. Let me look at a way converter so that we're able to see the actual price that I was transferring, that was transferred to me. So let me verify if we actually have this transaction on Arbitrum 1. So it's checking the transaction hash. Hopefully it found results for me. So how much money was this? Let's verify this price in value. So this is in way. $9.7. It's not pasting, maybe I didn't copy it. So when I copy it and paste it here, 9.7, let me type it, 268.268.7055.6885. So that's the price in way that I was converting, that I was transferring, and its equivalent in ETH is this 0.00 blah 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 cents, rather in ETH value. When you compare it against the total price of ETH right now, it was an equivalent of 2 cents. You see that? And if you remember, I actually had 2 cents on Arbitrum mainnet for this wallet. So now I want to specify the chain and get only transactions that happened on Arbitrum mainnet, because these are transactions of that address across different chains. And you can see there's quite a number of them. And these are things that I could actually, what can I say? This is information that I can arrange in a certain way for the end user to query this information according to their own requirement. Maybe they wanted to know how many transactions a specific wallet has done on a certain chain. They should be able to do that using this API endpoint. Now, for instance, if let's say, I think I had some activity on Base a while ago with this address. Even for BNB, chain 56 has let me first specify that I want chain 56, but how do I specify? Now, if you want to put another query parameter here, you have to use the AND symbol. Then you type the query parameter and then the specific value. So let's see, what's the query parameter that specifies the chains according to how SIMS API arranges its information. According to how SIMS API does its things, where is it? So these are active chains, supported chains rather. So if you want to specify the chain that you want to get information for, how do you do that? You use the keyword chain IDs like this, and then you specify the chains like that. So specifically, I want chain 56 and chain 42161, which is Arbitrum mainnet. You can specify the chains by their names or by their tags or by their chain IDs. So the one I want is this, and then BNB. But let me start with BNB. Let's see what activity I had on BNB. BNB, I think it's one of those I had the least activity on. So it should be able to query almost every information. It's one that I don't use very much. So chain IDs, I think it's chain IDs like that. Is it? chain IDs. Yes, then I specify the chain ID here. So chain IDs, chain 56. The limit could be 40. If it's less, of course, it will display all of them. But this is not my address. The address I want to use is this one. So I would change this address to fit this address, which is a state variable. And for that, I would simply do this. Then pass in wallet address as a parameter. Yes. Now I'm able to see, I'll be able to see activity of this wallet on that chain. So let me do that. Let me index again. From my observation, I think that SIM API is much faster. And on this chain, now all this information is for chain 56, and you can see, oh, I didn't know I had this much activity. This is one of those I don't use very much, BNB. So we're going to see all these things that I was doing and the value I was transferring across. So BNB, when we evaluate the value, let's start with the value. It was a receive method. How much money was this? I don't know why this isn't copying. Let me use another probably calculator. Way converter. Yeah, way converter. Way amount in way is that smallest unit of ether, as you can see it reads here. So in Gwei, that's the amount. In ETH, this is the amount. How much would this be? I don't know. By the standards of now, I wanted to say this because this one actually shows the real results. The worth in ETH right now, according to the current price of ETH. So this was approximately $1 or 0.0005. The native token would be BNB. Because this is on the Binance Smart Chain, which is an L1, and of course it doesn't use ETH as its native currency. It uses BNB. This Binance Smart Chain BSC. So we'll understand those things as we go ahead. But this is how you would index information from that chain. And I was still looking at the transactions. I want to pick out about 4 transactions. Just that I have a number of tabs serving different purposes. Let me see. I could even arrange them according to a certain even their transaction hashes are here, where they came from. It's almost like I could build my own blockchain explorer with all this data. Transaction hashes are right here, where the transactions came from. And there's a lot of information here when I look at it. Look at this. What asset was it? The block number, then if it was a value that was transferring. So these are all transactions that I did. Some of them don't really transfer value. Some of them just interact with contracts. I think there's somewhere where it might even show. Okay, I was using the approve command, the approve function. I was calling the approve function. So that doesn't even transfer value. It simply assigns rights to another address to spend my tokens on my behalf. And you can see most of them are really yeah, maybe you could look at this. This was a transfer of value. I think I was receiving USDT and BN. I don't know when was this. Okay, yeah, that is no worries. That's just money. So this is a transaction that was happening. Someone transferred value to me. And here you can see how much it was. So the transaction hash is here. We can even verify it on Binance Smart Chain. BSC. Scan. Let me see if it actually works this time. You can see the transaction hash, you can see it and see the transaction and all the information that happened. But you can see that I fetched all this information from an indexer. I didn't have to go to a blockchain explorer because if you're going to a blockchain explorer, you must already have some information that you're just going to verify if it actually happened. Okay. So what I was transferring in this case was it a transfer? Let me see. Interacted with that contract. Let's look at it. Okay, let's look at another transaction perhaps. Okay, now I have all these transactions. So I can choose to pick out specific elements from these transactions. Maybe you could suggest what elements I should pick out so that I display them in some kind of column that it's easy for us to evaluate. We could see probably the information about it. So I would like to maybe pick out, I'll pick out, let me see. In the token metadata, I will display the symbol. Yes, I'll display the symbol. And then the type of the transaction, and then the value. I think that would make sense. So that's what I'm going to display now down here after I fetch all my data. Now I already have the data. I'm just trying to figure out how I could display it on the interface. Where is my code base? Right here. So that's my address on chain 56. So I specified it. Then I get the data info right here. Now I want to display it down here because this is where I'm displaying all the data. So in the elements, I'll be getting the index, of course, to be the key. But very firstly, what do I want to display? I said I want to display, I'm starting with the token symbol. So how do I get to it? From the object that I received, the object has, excuse me, an array called activity, as you can see. So that's the array that I want to access now. It has an array called activity. And that's where I'm going in. Has an array called activity. So inside activity, for each of these elements now, what will I be getting? I will be getting firstly, when I get into the object token symbol, because I'm now in activity, and inside activity, actually no, this is now already inside the array activity. This is data info. Let me get the array activity itself from right here. Data info dot activity. Yeah. Because the other wasn't an array, it's an entire object, so I'm getting the array activity. It's the one I'm returning as the object from, rather as the array from the state variable. So this would be an instance of an object on the array activity. Then inside the token metadata object, I want the symbol. Pay attention to how I'm actually accessing these elements. You must know what kind of object you're actually what kind of data structure you're interacting with. Is it an array or an object? If it's an object, you access elements by dot notation. If it's an array, you access objects by index using the square bracket notation. So I wanted to get the symbol and the type of transaction, so that would be just element dot type here, and then the value that was transferred. So if I had one of the libraries that I could actually use, ethers.js, I would convert this value from way back to the equivalent in ETH, and we're actually going to do that. But for now, let's first display it, then I'll convert it, and we verify if it's actually the value when you convert it to ETH. So yes, this is what we have. Let's see if we attempt to get this data again, it returns the results like that. It's rather faster, but maybe data.map, entire data sets. Oh, data.activity. This is the correct state variable. This was a different one. This is where I'm supposed to actually store it. So if you notice, SIM API is rather faster compared to the previous API endpoints that we were using from the previous API. So these are things to consider when you choose what API you're going to use. Some are slower than others depending on what things they're doing in the background. Oh, it doesn't have array.map. So now I need to look at how I'm accessing this information, if I'm doing it correctly. So the data was returned, but it's because of how I'm accessing it that I can't get it correctly. This has an array activity, data info.activity. Okay, country properties of undefined reading symbol. How did I access it? Inside activity, when I get into activity, each element has a, let's see how I did that. Symbol was the issue. When I get into each element, each of these single objects, each of them has all this information. Was there a question? Sorry, I didn't get what you said. It's you're rather low. Activity is inside the object that was returned. So this is the entire object. You see, when I point at it, the whole thing becomes gray. So it has an element next offset and activity. It has only two elements. If okay, so now when you come here to activity is an array. It actually reads that it's an array here, okay? But it's an array of objects. So when I get into the array itself, what I did here in my code, I stored activity itself. I said what? Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, I'm accessing activity from this entire object. So this entire object is the data that will be returned to me. And you know, when I'm printing it here, I am printing it from this line here. So that object is data info, but it has an array called activity. To confirm that, let me do it here. When I call .activity here, this should change to the array activity itself. Maybe if I refresh, of course. Let me type it here like this. Then let me say this is the array. Let's see what it prints for us. You see, when it refreshes, it actually prints the array of 40 elements, which is the array activity. Now here it is the array. So the name activity exists as a key on the parent object. But now I'm getting the value itself. Excuse me. You got it now? Okay, so here I wanted to really print the entire object, so I can always refer to it correctly and know how to access the data. So I'm getting activity, the array, and storing it in the array in the state variable data. And then down here, I'm destructuring data using the map function. But inside the map function, every single element is an object. That is why I'm accessing these elements, these components by dot notation, because when I get the key, then I can get the value of the element. Okay, so that's where we are now. That's what we're trying to do. So when I come to the specific elements here, I was getting an error. For token metadata, I needed a symbol, just a symbol. And you can see token metadata is actually an object inside an object, which of course this is now going to be the instance that takes up the placeholder element. This entire object would be the element. So when I say element.token metadata, it would give me access to this. Ideally, that's what I did here. Unless if I typed it wrongly, token metadata, then inside token metadata, I wanted the symbol. And that's what I got here. That's what I typed here. Element.type, element.value, element.type, element.value. Value is right here. Okay, let's see if it works. So I'm fetching now. It says country properties of undefined reading symbol. Reading symbol. How is symbol typed? It is symbol. Let me try to remove this and see. Maybe there's an issue with it. I can always come back to it. So I want to get the type of transaction, then the value. So I can always repeat this because the API seems to be faster. So now you can see it gives me the data. It shows me the type of transaction and the value. But you see this value is in way. So it's not readable to me. I want to convert it now into the ETH equivalent. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the ETH here. Okay. Is a question? Yes, sir. Display the what? The code. Okay. Please be louder. Yes. Which line? First curly bracket, yes, line 62. Line 65, yes. Was missing? but I actually discovered you added brackets after inside here in the inside list. In the inside list? Yes. Inside the callback function or that's another function after the arrows, you added brackets. These? After, as if inside there you also added brackets. This was to cover the entire list. To cover the entire list, these parentheses. Usually, but I didn't give them to brackets. I don't know if you have the Oh, yes, yes. I know what you mean. So, if you're going to print elements, I'm actually mentioned this. If you're going to print elements using any JavaScript, logic within JSX, you don't use curly brackets, because if you use curly brackets, it will not display. You use parentheses. You put the elements in parentheses. So in JavaScript, the callback function will ideally have curly brackets here. Yes, that's actually true, though. It will ideally have curly brackets. I think this is that. Yes, that is accurate JS. But that callback function would not work in terms of, because what we're using this callback function for is to display this element list item. So if we use curly brackets, it won't display. It would actually raise an error. I think this could not be due to syntax errors. At which line is that? That is line 66. There should be an error here that shows that line 66 has an issue. Maybe not very clearly for now. But that's it. It's supposed to show, you're supposed to use parentheses. That's how you display elements from within JS logic inside JSX. So JSX is this syntax you enter into the return method, which has this div element outside wrapping around everything else. So if you ever wanted to display elements, probably this was JavaScript logic I was writing here. So if I wanted within this logic to generate an HTML element, like this was a list item, I put it in parentheses. You get it? Yeah, so that's the rule. It's just the rule. If you use curly brackets, it will not work. Because curly brackets are reserved for plain JavaScript logic. So if I was writing this same object, this same logic up here in the body above the return method without actually returning any HTML elements, I would use curly brackets. But if you're using it to return an HTML element on the front end, to render an HTML element, you have to put it in parentheses. Okay, so now what we wanted to do is convert this value. Let's first reduce this to convert this value into actual ETH, because it's now in way. And you see the values are too big, almost difficult to understand. Now, there's a specific library that we could use called ethers.js. I don't think we had an opportunity to interact with ethers.js. I think we interacted with VM. So maybe we could use VM. So you've interacted with VM, you used VM in your very first dApp. So now we're going to use a specific method on VM to convert these values in from what? From way to ETH. Okay, so you have to import it as a package, of course. So I wish I could just start another terminal here. So I have two terminals up here, that is one that is running my application, the second here where I'm going to import components, rather packages. So I'm going to import VM, install rather. So you install it from the npm registry, npm install VM. That should install VM for us. So after installing VM, I can import that specific method, which would help me convert all my values from way back to ETH. Okay, doesn't take very long, but we can give it can let it take its time to import, to install. So yes, this is very critical information. What I mean is, if you had to get all this information from a blockchain explorer, it's not something that is practical, because this is a history of all the transactions of my wallet on BSC. Imagine that. And this is just one chain, but I can also get another chain and another chain and another chain. But the indexer gives you the efficiency of being able to access all this information with just one API request. Because just imagine, you look at my code base, it has almost only 5 lines of code simply to access. Only 5 lines of code, I think, for me to be able to access this data. Okay, they're not exactly 5, but this is very little work compared to what you would do if you went manually to fetch the transaction history of that account on any chain, especially if it has a lot of activity. So I'm waiting on VM so I could make that conversion. But meanwhile, as it installs, okay, so we have this. Let me see what else what other endpoint we could try out, then we move on something more advanced. I'm really waiting on it, but it's okay. Let's first look at API. Okay, so we have used this endpoint and we have seen that it actually does return the results. Token metadata right here, symbol. I don't know why symbol failed to display, but that's okay. We can always try it again. So there's all these other kinds of data information you can get. Information you can get from this API. DeFi positions, we saw it's not available for now, but it was previously. I actually used it in one of the projects that I worked on. So this would give you all the positions that you have in different DeFi protocols. If you have liquidity positions on a DEX, or if you have lending positions on a lending protocol, it would show those positions with the amount that you have at stake. Even if you had so typically when you provide liquidity, sometimes there's a token that is given to you as an equivalent representation of the amount of tokens you've put into that position. So it's kind of like what would they call it? Maybe an IOU, or maybe a bond. I would compare it to a bond. So it's a representation of how much you have at stake in that protocol, but it's also exchangeable. Now with DeFi positions, you would also be able to see those tokens. They are called liquidity provision protocols, liquidity provision tokens. And then you could also see the positions that you've opened with those LP tokens. So it's a stream of information, and no matter how complex it is all available to you through an indexer, and you can query it and have it and use it on your front ends. So I want to convert this value to ETH from this cumbersome way equivalent that is difficult for us to read. For example, look at this value. There's a lot of there's a lot of numbers. It's difficult to even think about what it could be in terms of ETH. So I'm going to convert it. Now, first I would have to import the method is called format ether, and I'm going to import it from VM. Okay. Format ether, and I'm going to be importing it from VM. So how you use it, since it's a method, you pass this element as a parameter. I'm going to call it here, format ether, and then I pass in this parameter. So I have to pass it in as a string. So I would convert this to a string. And let's see if that value changes now to something more readable. Oh, it's refreshing. Yes, I think it now is a little bit more readable. So you can see all these are transactions that were done by this address. Transferring 15 ETH, transferring, no, not transferring as such. You can actually see the transaction, the nature of the transaction here. I was sending that amount, I was receiving that amount, sending that amount. I don't think I've ever been able to send and receive 15 ETH. Maybe there's something I need to correct with the way it is arranged. But you can see that the conversion has actually been made. Actually, this isn't ETH because it's on BSC chain. This is BNB, the token BNB. Although also, these transfers don't exactly represent the same tokens. So I would need to also get the correct token, the token symbol, then verify how many decimals it has, because that changes the calculation. So you can see how hierarchical the data can be. Not all these are actually BNB transfers. Some of them are transfers of other tokens on the BSC chain. So I'm going to try and look for the token symbol again and see if it works. I don't see why it shouldn't work. So element dot token metadata. Let me copy it this time and see. I want to get the symbol itself. So you can see this was a BNB transfer. This was also a BNB transfer, but this isn't a BNB transfer, and yet on the front end I'm displaying them all as BNB. So the token decimals are different for each of them. That means even the value is different. Token metadata. Then symbol. Hopefully it now displays it, because that's exactly the order. It's reading an error again. Cannot read properties of symbol. Is it a capital S? It is a lowercase s. I don't know why it's failing. Decimals, name. Maybe let me try the name itself. It still displays an error. Token metadata. Maybe there's something I'm not seeing. Let me look at it closely. Token metadata. Name. And it actually seems to be inside the element. Is it inside another token metadata? Okay. Element.token metadata, which I think is accurate. Okay, maybe I will use the assets type, because that would give me a clear picture of what I am transferring. Element.asset type. Asset type, you can see. Here I have a native token, BNB, transferring ERC20. So ERC20 For ERC20s now, I have to work with a different method. I could add an if function here that let me add a simple if function saying if asset type reads native, do this, if otherwise do something else. If asset type is equal to what? Is native, use that operation. Use that operation. Okay, this, that. Otherwise, use what operation. There's another method called format number. I think it's format units, yes. So this takes in the value and the number of parameters. So it would be the same thing. And ERC20 is have 6 parameters, 6 decimals. So this wouldn't exactly be that. It would be that. Format units, yes. So for ERC20s, the second ERC20 in the third position is 0, 1, 2. ERC20 with 18 decimals. Wow. Okay, let me try that. ERC20s with 18 decimals. It's very rare, so 15 BNB. The native asset is so maybe let me remove this. Might be misleading. So whenever you see native, it's BNB. Whenever you see ERC20, it's either USDT or something else. So this might have been USDT itself. Then this is BNB. BNB is approximately $900 right now, close to $1,000, I think. So this was probably something less. So yeah, this would be probably the accurate representation of this information. This would be $3. I don't know what token that is, but most likely it's USDT. It's the only one I've had interactions with. Probably $20. Yeah, so you can see the kind of process you would go through for you to kind of arrange this information in a way that is retrievable by the end user. And you can customize this information in every kind of way that you want for you to be able to receive, for you to be able to display the information to the end user. So this was token transaction history for a specific address. Oh, actually, so this is an address I always send funds to when I'm going to withdraw. It's a Binance address, and you can see this specific transaction is on when. Maybe I should get the date as well, when it was done, block time, so that I can know what time it is that this transaction was done. So I'm going to add block time here, element.block time. Or how is it written, block time like that? Block time like that, so that I know when the transaction was done. Okay, so I can even predict some things with it. So it was so this transaction was done on 28th January 2026, 012. I think it's this transaction, 012, yes. So this is the transaction. It's exactly 15 USDT, yes. It was a transaction from 396. That's one of my addresses, I believe. It's actually the address, yes. And yes, this is the amount that I transferred. This is the value. This is 15 USDT. Only that it has 18 decimals according to this standard. Although USDT as a token itself has 6 decimals. But not to worry, this is just small discrepancies, and you must really know the differences between these things. But it takes a bit of experience with these tokens on chain for you to know how to interact with them, how to calculate the correct values, so you don't mislead yourself or you don't mislead the end user. Okay, so you can see here this is on BNB, BSC rather, but I can change the chain to Arbitrum. I can change the chain to ETH, I can change the chain to any other chain. So I'm going to try and change this to another chain. What other chain can I use? Supported chains. DeFi positions. I want the one that I was working on. I'm going to change this to probably Celo 42220. I'm using chain IDs because they are much shorter. Let's see, do I have any activity on Celo? So now the decimals might still change depending on, so I have only 28 transactions on Celo, and you can see all of them here. And when I made them, you can see when I transferred one Celo token here, you can see, I want to look for Celo only, or some other token, ERC20 here. Others are contract calls, like this one is a contract call, so there is no value that I was transferring, but you can see all the information is here, and you can get all this information in any other format. Either you want to download it through a CSV, everything is possible, and you can implement that. Maybe let me try, let me see, what other chain have I interacted with? Lisk, I don't think I have very much activity on Lisk, so we should be able to see so many almost all the transaction in detail. 1135. Okay, so I have only 2 transactions on Lisk. Transferring the native asset. This is ETH on Lisk. Is it ETH? I'm not sure what it is. Then a contract call. Maybe I was transferring funds to some call type, outgoing, whatever this was, I don't know, but maybe I was transferring tokens somewhere. So you can see all your history through just one endpoint, and when making one request through one endpoint. On the Solana virtual machine, some of these are really still in beta. They're not very active. You can only use the value from next offset. Now here things change up a little bit, because with SVM decimals are different for different tokens. So the standard is slightly different. But yeah, so that is this is how you would use SIMS API. And as almost everything repeats itself, but most importantly, you need to know how to look at the data and be able to fetch it, and rather, after you have fetched it and you have it in your console, which you of course manually display yourself, you need now to think about how you're going to display it on the interface. You don't, because there's all this information. I don't need all this information for the end user. All I need to do is display the kind of information that the user expects of me at a specific page, perhaps in a specific context that aligns with their expectations at that time. Maybe I could show you one analytics dashboard that I think Dune itself is a very good example. When you look at it, I think maybe they use their own API, probably. So actually, I think maybe we could see the activity of this API key now. See how many calls we've made with it today. We have made 47 calls. Wow. So now these are the kinds of things that are tracked. And it's only tracked because you have an API key. So the API can now verify how many requests you've made. And using this, they can choose to price you based on how active. Because this is your application now. Probably you're building an application already. And depending on the rate of utility of the endpoint through your API key, They can choose either to limit you based on their pricing model. So almost all APIs have a pricing model because the model is to enable you have access, constant access to that service. And they're running machines, so surely they need to get money out of it to maintain that service. So they have a free API that allows you to make requests per second, 5 requests per second, which is relatively normal if you don't have an application that is being utilized by the entire world. Because in a single second around the world, 100 people could make a request. And this is typically what happens when an API endpoint is having a lot of activity. Some requests will be bounced. So sometimes you make a request, sometimes it doesn't go through, sometimes it takes much longer. So it goes back to the mechanics and the economics that govern how an API runs. Yeah, then there's the enterprise model here. You pay $500 every month to allow between 100 to 1,000 requests every second. And that is the pricing model of SIEMs. And I think it's actually affordable. Compared to other APIs, this is much, much more affordable. Because in a single second, I don't think 5 requests is a very bad deal. Because seconds are really, really, really short frameworks of time. Okay, so that's how you would use the Dune API, rather the SIEM API. I won't go through all the endpoints because you can always get through them yourself. Now, I want us to look at the Dune API. So there's a number of things you could do with this API. Maybe we could just look at it because of time and maybe see the different ways in which we can access information. So we've been using the HTTPS protocol to query information from blockchains, but there's another method of querying information that you could use. You could use GraphQL subqueries. Let me see. You could use WebSockets, APIs and connectors. Okay, so back to the Gold Rush API. So we had the foundational API. We were working with the foundational API, as you can see here. But then there's a streaming API. So for instance, if you've looked at things like trading platforms, they have real-time data of what is happening in the market. When you think about it, where do you think they get that data from? You can see if you've looked at candlesticks. Let me try opening a trading platform here. Maybe even GMX would be a good example. It's much more straightforward. TradingView requires me to create accounts and stuff, but I'll look at GMX because GMX is actually a Web3 tool. Okay. There's GMX. I could even check out Hyperliquid. I just want to show you what streaming data looks like and why it's different from historical data. So everything we've been looking at is historical data. That means it's data of things that have already happened. Am I offline? Oh, sorry about that. It was just an issue with my internet. So yeah, let me share my screen again. Yeah, as you can see, I wanted to open a trading platform and show us what it would actually look like. The kind of data that I would call live data, streaming data. So GMX is a perpetuals trading platform. Perpetuals are not exactly crypto natives, but they're close to crypto native assets that are derivatives of assets that do exist as assets in the Web3 ecosystem. So a derivative is simply an asset that represents an underlying asset. Derives its value from something else. For instance, you could say stocks. Stocks derive their value from the equity of a company. Yes, so essentially that's what a derivative is, and perpetuals are derivatives. So hopefully I can have this page load in the next 2 seconds. Meanwhile, I could take a look at, I think someone's microphone is on. Okay. So yes, I wanted to look at different services or different mechanisms we could use to fetch data. So we're using the HTTPS model, protocol rather, for us to be able to access the data. But there's another mechanism we could use. We might not be able to see it in detail, but I just want to show it to us. So you can see this is a foundational API for Gold Rush. We're able to get token balances, transaction information, NFTs, and more. But this is essentially historical data. And the streaming API gives you real-time information using WebSockets. So WebSockets is another protocol that you could use to interact with an external service and obtain information in a much more quicker and instantaneous way compared to the HTTPS request model. It is a little bit slower and really is based on information that is available at the time when the request is made. Otherwise, you would have to await the results. Hopefully, I can look at the streaming API. Gold Rush. Okay. Streaming API. Maybe we could look at this tomorrow. So it works something like this. You create a query, you subscribe to something, and then you specify the intervals over which you would be polling that resource for information to return back to you. And yes, you provide all the specific information that you want to use in making that request. So we're going to be using this on Monday. You can go back and read about some queries. You can read about an indexing platform called The Graph. We'll be looking at it. We're looking at Gold Sky as well, using the same standard. And maybe the other thing we'll look at is how to actually fetch data when we create SDK instances of these specific protocols, these specific indexing tools. So for instance, when I look at the API reference here for foundational API, I should be able to even see the SDK. Let me Somewhere I actually saw it. I think I was looking at Gold Sky or Gold Rush. I'm not sure where that was. Just want to show you something. Just give me a moment. Let me find it. So you can use the streaming API to get real-time data, structured data on blockchain events over WebSockets. No polling, no lags. So it's live information that whenever there is something that comes from that resource, it automatically is delivered to your front end. So for instance, if you're making a transaction right now, every information regarding that transaction, the moment it completes, the endpoints that query information from that resource, where you're getting that information from, would immediately deliver that data to your front end. So think of it like how the block explorers work. When you're making a transaction, if you provide a transaction hash on the blockchain or on the block explorer, it would show you the status of your transaction. So it works. So WebSockets work in the same, using the same standard. They get the accurate status of whatever it is that you're fetching and return it back to you on whatever front end you're actually viewing your information from, rather than having to wait on something to be complete first. So we'll see how we could use WebSockets. We are also going to see how we can use SDKs to query information from a blockchain. So I wanted to show you OHLC data and how real time it is. So these are things I would love us to research over the next few hours. Can look at this. Maybe I'll share them in Telegram. Let me do that now. Every time I say it, I forget. Where's the central code cohorts 2? So you can research about that. You can research about, look at GMX as well as a trading platform. Look at go read about Dune and some of its other services, because there's a number of things we're going to particularly look at regarding Dune next week. Things like how we can index events of different contract addresses as long as they have the same ABI. How we could use subqueries to do quite a number of things. Okay. I will not even be able to go to the extent of the capacity of these platforms, but I just want to give you a glimpse on how you could use them to build applications yourselves. So hopefully this can work now. I wanted to do this yesterday, but it failed. Let me close with this. So I think we can start with this next time, but I want to try out something. I want to see if we could actually see how indexing is very powerful and how it was used in real life and on this platform. Relay.link. I want to close all these browsers so I don't get slow speeds. Maybe I should even turn off the application because I think we're done using it for now. And every update that I've made here, I'm going to, I don't know, did I share the link, the GitHub repository to? Every update that I've made today, I'm pushing it right now. So you can always go back to the same repository, you'll find all these updates. Yes, so everything is going to be right there. I think, show me the repository name here. Git push, no configuration. Really? I think I created the repository. Oh yeah, I have it inside. Let me first open it. I'm not going to. How I wish I had known. So I'm just going to copy all this again. I don't want to really go through a hassle of setting up things now. Okay, the Git file is there. That's all I wanted to preserve. Everything else can go. So maybe I'll fix what I wanted to fix. So this is where all the files will go. Data indexing Git. So all the updates will be there. Messages. This is let me call it updates still. Did I miss out a thing? Okay, I think every update is made. Update. Okay. So yes, the updates will be there. Hope it will give me the GitHub repo link here, then I can just copy it from here and share it with us. Otherwise, that should be the end of the session. Meanwhile, I just want to demonstrate. Okay, so all the updates will be found there at this repository. So I'll share the link again in, let me stop sharing. I'll share the link again in Telegram right away, so you can always go back to Telegram and look at it. Just a link to the repository that has the code base of the work we did yesterday and today. Yeah, but maybe I could reshare, but specifically I'm going to be sharing I want to demonstrate this. Okay, so I want to connect my wallet here and see if it gives me the balances, the token balances, and you see how fast it goes at capturing the balances that I have on all these different chains in just a single instance, almost instantly. So I try to reduce all the applications that might take away my processing power. Okay, so I'm connecting Substrate, one of my wallets. I think this bridge now is getting issues. I can hardly connect. Then it's going to fail. Okay, I'm going to try another bridge. Hopefully SquidRouter has, I don't know if SquidRouter has a mechanism for allowing me to see the balances on different assets, or different assets on different chains. Okay, let's give it a few seconds. Okay, so I see it here. When I click sign in, it requests me to connect a wallet. I can browse all wallets, connect MetaMask, and connect. Okay, hopefully it connects. I think it may be successful. Approve connection. Okay, let's give it a few seconds. And you can see that my wallet is connected, ends with 93. Now, look at what is happening here. So it's trying to fetch all the balances that I have on different chains all at once. Hopefully it loads in the next few seconds. This is exactly what we were doing, by the way. This is an equivalent of a loader. They're called skeleton loaders. So I don't know what API they use, but it's relatively slow, as you can tell. The results take a bit of time for them to come back to the front end. And it's evident in how fast, but also depending on the scale of data that they are fetching and how much it has to be organized. So you can see it shows me I have this amount of, I don't know what token this is, ETH on Arbitrum. Okay, so you can see it shows me the tokens that I have. ETH on ETH, I have 0. Solana on Solana. Sol on Solana, I have $0. How about on other different chains? Shows me only 2 chains. Hide small balances. No, I don't want to hide small balances. But I have, okay. So I can always switch the different to different networks and see the balances that I have on those networks. So at this point, I can see when I click on Ethereum, it shows me the tokens on Ethereum, sometimes even the balances I have. So on Arbitrum, ETH on Arbitrum, USDC on Arbitrum, USDT 0 on Arbitrum, Kujira on Arbitrum, on OP. This doesn't show the balances, but some platforms do show balances here. So yeah, that's how you practically interact with a platform, a decentralized bridge. So I essentially have $0 on the entire wallet. I could use some donations. But yeah, the other thing you should never forget, after you finish interacting with a platform, disconnect your wallet, because it does not guarantee the security of your wallet. So let me disconnect these two. So I am secure now from any attacks that might interfere with the security of this platform. Okay, that's basically it, but maybe tomorrow I'll find more examples to demonstrate how the extent of this data and what it can do when you have it fast enough. It can make the distinction between how much money someone should take from a protocol and how much money they shouldn't. Maybe I could show you Aave as well and explain how they might use indexers and maybe what is that platform called? Lido Finance. The last one could be what is that called? Sparkland. Okay, so these are all platforms that are decentralized and they use data in different ways. So Aave is a lending platform. So that means is that against the tokens you have, you can obtain a loan from Aave protocol. On Lido Finance is a refi platform. You can stake your tokens for rewards. And this also uses, there are so many forms of data. Some of it we might not even be able to look at it. Now there's data that goes as deep as node operations and activity with validators and clients. Let me show you another platform that I think is very important. These are all platforms that are using indexed data for different things. Yeah, let me look at Tally. So Tally is a governance platform. That means you get into a DAO, you looked at DAOs, and then you can evaluate if a proposal has uh, has been voted into favor or voted out of favor. Looking at tally. Oh my god, I don't know if I can find it. I don't know what the TLDR is. The TLD is tally governance voting. Maybe I'll find it with this. So when you look at how voting is done in Web3, it is actually interacting with protocols. DAOs have smart contracts, actual smart contracts. And when you interact with those smart contracts, you can vote in favor of something or vote against something. There's actually a platform I built that follows a similar protocol. I'll maybe talk about it tomorrow, where people can come together, bring their finances together, and then allocate that capital to do certain things on different, to carry out different DeFi activities. Maybe they are trading or they are using that money in a lending protocol. But it all comes down to the community. It's almost like a DAO. So people would come to a consensus about what they want to use that percentage of money for. And then they would vote in favor or against a certain proposal. But it's really interacting with smart contracts. So all those things are queryable by an indexer. I don't know if I can reach the platform itself. Tally.xyz. This is the documentation, so probably I should find it here. Okay, use tally. So I want to see maybe if we could find a proposal and see how many people have voted in favor of it or voted against it. And by the way, for instance, look at this. These are all proposals that people are voting. This is a voting platform. So people create proposals on Tally and they can vote through their DAOs in favor of proposals or against proposals. But this is all data that is accessible through an indexer. Actually, Tally uses an indexer. To bring all this data together is not something very simple, and organize it together like this. So you can see, for instance, this is one of the platforms that exists in Web3 ENS. It serves a very particular purpose. You will see it later. So maybe they have a proposal. They have 62 proposals here. If you can come in and see how many proposals have been signed against or signed in favor of. If we looked at this proposal, for instance, the quorum was that amount of 1 million, and you can see that this amount has signed in favor of, but these are all actual contract interactions, like function calls on specific contracts. And let's look at this. Copy proposal ID. Okay. So the proposal has to go through a process and things like that, but everything is verifiable. This proposal registers that and set resolver. And that you can see these are actual contract addresses. But maybe I will look at let's tomorrow maybe if I forget you can remind me, we shall look at a DAO contract and look at the activity on a DAO contract to see how we could probably use an indexer to get information from a DAO contract to evaluate what proposals are happening in that DAO and what things are happening and which addresses are most active in that DAO. So that's Tally, and that they could use indexing to maybe bring proposal information on a front end. So Lido Finance also has something similar. As you can see, these are interactions. These are votes. Okay, but you can see these are votes that are actually done by addresses. You see that? When I click on this might actually be a transaction hash, if I'm not mistaken, of the actual contract interaction. So votes 40, voting power, this is a person that is voting. That's probably their address. And I want to yeah, this is a solidity function, and these are probably contracts that they're interacting with, maybe giving rights to certain people or removing rights from certain people to do certain things in that DAO. And this is all information you can query if you're probably building something that is around blockchain indexing. Aave is a lending protocol. There's so many ideas you can build products with around this whole idea of getting blockchain data, whether it's historical data or live data. There's a lot of things you can build with fetching blockchain data and then using it on a front end to determine certain things. Maybe you can control logic, front end logic basing on those activities. So yes, that's a little bit it for now. So tomorrow we'll look at more examples, maybe more practical examples. And yeah, unless someone has a question, I would love to close it here. Otherwise, thank you for coming.